Crimewatch.
Tonight, the 79-year-old widow who died after she was mugged in broad daylight just yards from her home.
No, please leave me alone.
She was found still clutching the handle of the bag which contained her husband's ashes.
She wouldn't have let go of her bag. She wouldn't even forget him going from one room to another, let alone let go of her bag for anybody to take it.
Tell us, who killed Nellie Garrity? Hello and welcome to Crimewatch. We're going to bring you the full story of what happened to Nellie Garrity very soon. But first, let's have a quick look at tonight's other appeals. As ever, we've got a studio full of detectives just ready to take your call. They want to identify the gang of armed robbers who struck a village post office in Nottinghamshire.
What I saw was a gun.
Open the safe! No, I can't!
And I ended up on the floor.
And just who murdered 77-year-old retired teacher Betty Yates at her remote riverside cottage? The investigating officers need your help to identify who, last week, sent anonymous letters containing important details of the case. And we'll have some remarkable CCTV. Just take a look at this footage, showing the moment a gang burst into a minicab office in North London. Also, police need to know who could have killed a man in Worcester by deliberately setting fire to his flat.
I just can't imagine what it would have felt like for him, struggling probably to get out of the flat and knowing he couldn't.
And Matthew's here with the latest news on some previous cases. Matthew.
Yes, including an arrest and a charge in the case of 15-year-old Mo Borner, who was critically injured after being attacked in Bexhill in Sussex. And I'll have the inside story of how an ingenious bluff by detectives in North Wales led to the capture of a cunning murderer.
He was watching us, digging the fields.
Stand by, subject one.
But little did he know that we were also watching what he was doing at exactly the same time.
And can you help to track down a priceless collection of Scottish coins? Stolen in what police think was a targeted raid, some of them are more than 900 years old. But before all of that, I need to tell you about a couple of appeals to track down escaped prisoners. Firstly, detectives in Staffordshire are urgently trying to trace 31-year-old John Anslow, who escaped from a prison van near Bromsgrove. It happened on Monday. Anslow was being transported from Hewell Grange prison, where he was on remand after being charged with the murder of father of one Richard Deacon, who was shot at his home in Chasetown in Staffordshire in July of 2010. The prison van was attacked by 3 masked men carrying sledgehammers, who got out of this silver Volkswagen Sirocco. The gang later switched to a silver Mercedes, which police believe may have been a C-class model, with the partial registration plate KR11. That happened in nearby Stony Lane. There's a £10,000 reward for information leading to Anslow's arrest and return to prison. Anyone who's got information about his whereabouts should call Staffordshire Police Incident Room on 01 785 235 051. And if you do see him, don't approach him, just call 999 immediately. Meanwhile, police in Suffolk are looking for 26-year-old Andrew Farndon, who escaped from custody yesterday. 2 prison officers were threatened with a gun and forced to release Farndon as they escorted him to hospital in Bury St Edmunds last night. Farndon, who was serving a sentence for GBH, had longer hair and a goatee beard when he escaped. If you've got any information, do call Suffolk Police. Their number is 01 473 613 500. And if you see this man, call 999 immediately. More details about both these appeals are on our website. It's bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. OK, it's time now to go back to our first reconstruction of tonight. The fatal mugging of 79-year-old widow Nellie Garrity. It happened in November, where she lived in Shaw, just outside Oldham in Greater Manchester.
'79-year-old Nellie Geraghty's whole life revolved around this small community of Shaw, just outside Oldham. But it's also where her life ended 2 months ago, when she was attacked, mugged, and left for dead, still clutching the broken handle of her handbag. Nellie was a devoted mother and grandmother, and had been happily married to her husband Frank since 1953. But his death 17 years ago had left her bereft.
When he died, she wouldn't go out anywhere. She didn't like people going to the house to visit her.
Ever since his death, Nellie carried her husband's ashes with her everywhere.
We've never referred to the ashes as ashes. It's always been Frank. When he came back from the crematorium, it was in quite a big box. And she made covers for it, and she had to have a bag big enough for Frank to fit in. She's never gone anywhere without him.
Late morning on Thursday the 24th of November, Nellie left her home to go to meet some friends at her local community centre, just a few minutes' walk away.
She was normally quite a reserved, quiet person, but she did like company as well, especially in the winter. She would go, you know, that was a nice time for us to go and visit the people that lived around her.
Her journey would have taken her along Elizabeth Grove. And as always, Nellie had her handbag containing her late husband's ashes. We know she entered the alleyway at the end of Elizabeth Grove at 11:50. But she never made it to the other end.
No, no, please leave me alone.
A few minutes later, a passerby discovered Nellie. She was semi-conscious and barely breathing. She still had the handle of her handbag, but the rest had been snatched, and with it, her husband's ashes. She was rushed to hospital, but died the next day.
And just after 12 o'clock, the phone rang, and they said, "Can you get to us as soon as possible? She's going fast." By the time I got there, she'd gone.
The shocking nature of Nellie's death made headline news.
An elderly widow has died after trying to stop a mugger stealing her handbag in which she'd kept her husband's ashes for 17 years.
And many in the local community turned out to look for Nellie's handbag and Frank's ashes. But despite the best efforts of local residents and specialist forensic officers, Nellie's bag has still not been found, and her killer is still at large. At 79, Nellie was physically tiny. She was just under 5 foot tall. But her family and police are convinced that when she was confronted in this alley, she desperately tried to fight off her attacker.
She wouldn't have let go of her bag. She wouldn't have gone anywhere. She wouldn't even forget him going from one room to another, let alone let go of her bag for anybody to take it.
Detective Chief Inspector Joanne Rawlinson is leading the investigation. Joanne, Nellie was determined to hang on to her bag, but she was just physically overwhelmed, wasn't she?
Yes, when we found her, she was still holding on to a handbag handle. That's actually been damaged. It's not merely fell off from the handbag, it's damaged significantly, which shows the level of strength and fight that Nellie's put up to keep hold of that bag.
Take me through the injuries that she had, because she had many, didn't she?
Yes, she's got a significant injury to the back of her head, one to her forehead, and she's also got some area of heavy bruising to her right shoulder and down her right arm, which is the arm we knew she carried a handbag in.
The investigation continues, but Nellie's family
have been left grieving the death of a mother and the loss of a father.
She wanted to be with my dad. She was waiting for her time to be with him.
He was her life. And that's why she fought for him, and that's why she's not with us.
It's just heartbreaking, isn't it? DCI Joanne Rawlinson from Greater Manchester Police, you saw her there, she's joined us now with her team. Firstly, it's very important to stress you're treating this as a murder investigation, and people should also remember this was an elderly, vulnerable lady attacked in broad daylight.
Yes, Nellie went to a local community centre every Tuesday and Thursday for lunch. She was attacked just 100 yards from her front door. She was left with a severe head injury, which shows the level of force that was used.
Handbag hasn't been recovered, ashes haven't been recovered.
No, we do have the strap of the handbag. It's a black shoulder bag. As you can see, the strap has been damaged,
right.
but the handbag is still missing. We do know that Frank's ashes were kept in a container, which Nellie kept in a blue velour pouch similar to this. Also inside a handbag was a green spiral cord, again similar to this, and there was also a pink wallet with Ocean Village on it.
Nellie had sewn that little blue pouch with her very own hands, we should tell people. Potential witnesses then, you're looking for people to come forward. That's crucial in solving this.
Yes, anyone with any information, please come forward. But more specifically, I want to speak to two youths who I know were on Elizabeth Grove that headed towards the avenue, and a man that was stood with a child in the garden of 8 Victoria Street. I really believe they have vital information that might just assist us.
OK, and Joanne, there's a bike that you think might be important?
Yes, there was a bike seen in the area on CCTV, and we've recreated an image to show you what we believe it looked like. We know it's a black-framed mountain bike, possibly with full suspension, and we believe that the wheels and spokes have been spray-painted a pinky-orange colour, very distinctive.
Very distinctive, but there's a reward, yeah?
Yes, there's a £5,000 reward for any information that leads to the successful recovery of the handbag and ashes or a successful prosecution.
Great, thank you very much. It's truly unbelievable, this, isn't it? Nellie's family, at the very least, deserve to know who did this, and they are desperate, of course, for the ashes to be returned. If you can help, you must do the right thing. Call now, 0500 600 600. You could call the independent charity, Crime Stoppers. You can do that entirely anonymously. 0800 is their number, 555 111. Now, Matthew has tonight's first collection of wanted faces.
Well, first up is Esanula Moabat. The 18-year-old is wanted in connection with the murder of a butcher who was stabbed in his shop in Wood Green in London last September. Moabat has links to Gloucester, Leicester and Birmingham, as well as North London. There's a reward of up to £10,000 for information leading to his arrest, but he is considered dangerous, so please don't approach him. Just call the police immediately. Next is Barry Robert Brunton. Now, he's wanted in connection with indecent assaults on a child in Bishop Stortford in Hertfordshire, dating back to the 70s. Now, this is an image of him as he was then, but police have used age progression technology to show how he might look now. Well, 63-year-old Brunton, who's used the names Barry and Dennis Roberts, has links to the Isle of Wight, Norfolk and Cambridge. Number 3 is Jason Mackenzie Paul. Now, police want to speak to him about a large-scale conspiracy to supply heroin worth more than £400,000. Mackenzie Paul, who has links across London and Essex, uses the street name J-Money, which he has tattooed on his upper left arm. The 25-year-old, who usually wears glasses, is also interested in martial arts. Lastly, for now, is Abdul Samba Ahmed Raza. He is known also as Samad, the 25-year-old Turkish national, is wanted in connection with the rape of a 13-year-old girl in Llanelli last month. Raza has links to Stoke-on-Trent, Leeds, Sheffield and London. Well, all of tonight's faces are on the website bbc.co.uk/crimewatch, and if you know where they are, 0500 600 600, or you can text 63399, type crime, space, and then your message.
Now, in an effort to live a quieter life, Sarah and David Drazy took on the business of running a village post office and shop in Shire Oaks, just outside Worksop in Nottinghamshire. As well as their place of work, it's also the couple's home. But on an evening in November, their peace was shattered when 2 armed robbers burst in and used extreme violence to get what they wanted.
This is Shire Oaks, near Worksop in Nottinghamshire. It's a quiet village and the last place the residents might expect to be the scene of a vicious armed robbery. But this is exactly what happened at this small post office in November of last year.
We moved to Shire Oaks about 10 years ago. We ran the business up till a couple of years ago as it was newsagent shop and post office. Unfortunately, Dave got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and we decided that we'd get rid of the newsagent side and I would just run the shop and the post office to give Dave more time.
Hello.
It was a normal Wednesday. There was no reason whatsoever to expect anything untoward.
Just taking Ted for a walk. Won't be long.
Right, love.
Come on. Let's go. Drop down to the canal.
One of the pair ransacked David and Sarah's bungalow, taking around £400 of the couple's own money.
I'd been out about 20 minutes and I opened the door and he comes dashing in. But this time he dashed in barking.
Whatever is the matter with you?
Stay there! Shut up! Shut your door! I'm gonna shoot it! Come on! Get on! Open that safe! Come on! Come on, open the safe! Open the safe!
The attacker grabbed bundles of cash and unregistered tax discs from the post office safe.
Right, come on!
Before taking the keys to David's car.
Get out! Come on!
The car the attackers used for the getaway was low on fuel, but the men didn't need to get far. The couple's distinctive Jeep Cherokee was found abandoned just a 5-minute drive away. Did you see the gang swap cars? We need to know how they made their escape from here and what direction they took.
You can get through a day without thinking about it, and then something will trigger it off, and you just become an emotional wreck.
You know, I've got Parkinson's, but I didn't never shook as much as I do now. I'll say it's 50% worse than it was.
Apart from the shock and the trauma of having somebody standing in your hall pointing a gun at you, it was the aggression. It's just unspeakably scary.
What I saw was a gun. And then the next bloke came through with a hammer. And I ended up on the floor.
People in the village have been wonderful. But we don't want to stay anymore. It's up for sale. We've got to get out and have a nice, normal, quiet life like we expected to have.
Well, we're joined now by DI Ash Wilson from Nottinghamshire Police. You saw him in the reconstruction there. As Sarah said, unspeakably scary. This was a terrifying attack for this couple.
Yeah, and a completely unnecessary level of violence used. David was not capable of giving any physical resistance at all, completely unnecessary. They've also threatened to shoot the couple's dog. Thankfully, the post office have significantly increased the security since that time.
You're interested in the possibility of witnesses coming forward who might have seen this gang swap cars after the robbery?
Yep, the vehicle, which is a Jeep Cherokee, was abandoned on the A57 northbound, known locally as Shire Oaks Roundabout. This was about 6 p.m. on the day of the incident. Someone will have seen these people get out the car and possibly into another car, and it's those people I would appeal to come forward.
And what about the way the robbers got into the property? That in itself was quite unusual, wasn't it?
Yes, I would describe it as almost an old-fashioned way of gaining entry. They've actually drilled through a wooden-framed rear window and gained entry that way. Indicates to me that they have some criminal knowledge.
Ash, do you think they were sort of staking out, watching the property beforehand?
Yeah, we have a reconstruction to show, but we know a male was seen about 6 nights before at the rear of a neighbour's property, but importantly, that leads to the post office at the back. That person has not come forward as yet, and I would dearly like to speak to them.
OK, as well as a bundle of cash, these guys took tax discs as well?
Yeah, 15 tax discs in total, 14 that expire at the end of April this year, and 1 that expires at the end of November. The serial numbers are all on the Crimewatch website.
OK, thanks very much. The serial numbers that Ash was talking about there on those tax discs are all available in detail on the website. If you do have any of the ones which were stolen, we would urge you to get in touch. There is a £10,000 reward on offer for information leading to a conviction. Sarah and David's lives, as you've seen, have been terribly affected by that horrific robbery. If you know anything about it, please do the right thing. Call 0500 600 600. Now, Matthew's got some CCTV for you to take a look at.
And we start with more shocking footage from the summer riots. This time, a terrifying attack on a minicab office in North London.
It's just after midnight on the 9th of August last year, inside the foyer of a cab firm in Chalk Farm, and a gang of looters is trying to break in. They eventually manage to force the lock and swarm into the tiny office where 2 terrified members of staff are trapped. They plead with them to stop, but are savagely punched and kicked in the head. The rioters then attack the camera system. We need names for these violent thugs. This is the entrance to the Canteen pub in Bristol, just after 11 on a Tuesday evening. A tall man with a beard saunters in, but he seems a bit lost, first going one way, then another. A few minutes later, he's managed to find his way to the bar, where he's talking to another drinker sitting nearby. But it's not a friendly chat. Suddenly, the attacker lunges at the victim, smashing a pint glass in his face and then kicking him before hurrying off. The glass only just missed an artery in the victim's neck and has left him permanently scarred. This was a vicious, unprovoked attack. Tell us tonight who was responsible. We're on the number 25 bus travelling through London city centre during the early hours of a Saturday last July. The victim is dozing after finishing a night shift. As he snoozes, 2 men sitting behind try to reach into his bag. Getting nothing, one of the men then brazenly tries to grab the man's wallet. The victim wakes up and realises what's going on. But his attacker is determined, and the pair grapple. Despite being punched several times, the victim puts up a good fight, but in the end, the robber manages to take his wallet. The victim eventually escapes downstairs, while the two men responsible sit smirking. Tell me who they are tonight.
Well, all the CCTV is on the website, and if you can name anyone you've seen, call 0500 600 600 or text on 63399, type crime, space, and then your message.
And do remember that you can log on to our website to see all of our reconstructions as well. OK, it's time now for some updates on some previous appeals.
Well, we start with some news on a case from our last programme. We asked for information about an attack on 15-year-old Mo Borner, who was critically injured after being punched in the head as he made his way home from a beach party in Bexhill in Sussex in October. Well, as a result of information received from you, a 20-year-old man has been arrested and charged with GBH. Well, Mo has since turned 16, and I'm sure he'll be pleased to hear that his condition is improving. He's now able to communicate with his family and is making steady progress. Next, a case we featured 4 years ago. Football fan AJ Clark was killed after being punched in the street in Liverpool city centre in November 2007. We showed you this CCTV of the man police believed was responsible for AJ's death. Well, earlier this month, that man, 25-year-old Malik Al-Brummy from Fairfield in Liverpool, was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Now, have a look at this footage, which we broadcast in September 2010, of a man harassing the female occupant of a house in Brighton in the middle of the night. Well, viewers watching the programme identified the peeping Tom as 40-year-old Paul Goodenough from Leatherhead. Last month, he was given a 12-month suspended prison sentence, a curfew, and he'll remain on the sex offenders register for 10 years. Finally, you might remember this CCTV of a man who attacked a Good Samaritan who'd intervened to stop an assault on a train in London in June 2010. As a direct result of calls to the studio, the man in the footage was identified as 25-year-old James Tibbs from Essex, and last month he was given 240 hours of community service in order to pay his victim £250 compensation. Many thanks for all of those crucial calls.
Yes, good news. Right, still to come tonight. The appalling arson attack on a man as he slept at his home in Worcester.
There's a fire outside my front door.
And these very valuable Scottish coins, ones very similar, were possibly stolen to order. Detectives need to know whether you've been offered any. And we'll have the fascinating story of how detectives cracked a seemingly impossible murder case.
We were dealing with one of the most difficult cases you'll ever deal with. We didn't have a body, we didn't have any witnesses, and we didn't have any forensic evidence.
But first, let's go to Matthew, who's got the latest on what's been happening on the phone so far. Matthew.
Kirsty, thank you. It's busy. Let's interrupt briefly Joanne, who's leading the hunt for Nellie Geraghty's killer. Joanne, I've seen you taking a number of calls. What's come in so far?
We've had a number of calls in relation to the handbag. However, I desperately need to speak to people about the man and child that I mentioned in the garden earlier and the two youths on the avenue and the bike. Have you had a bike like that stolen? Do you know where that bike is now? This is such an appalling attack that's left a family devastated. We need to find Nellie's killer and we need to find Frank's ashes. Please, give us a call.
I'll let you get back to those calls, Joanne. Thanks very much. Good luck, Kirsty.
Right, an appeal now for information on a case you may have seen in the news. Just over 3 weeks ago, retired schoolteacher Betty Yates was found dead at her remote riverside cottage next to the River Severn near Bewdley in Worcestershire. The 77-year-old widow had been stabbed and beaten with her own walking stick. Since her death, officers have been carrying out extensive inquiries to try to establish who was responsible for her murder, including detailed forensic searches of her home as well as the surrounding woodland. Well, last week, police received 2 anonymous letters containing information about Mrs. Yates's death. Both letters have been typed, and the one sent to Bewdley Police Station on Monday, the 16th of January, was in a handwritten envelope. The other letter was sent via the local newspaper in this envelope here. Now, officers are extremely keen to speak to the authors of these letters. They believe they were written by different people and are urging them to please get in touch tonight. Detectives think that Mrs. Yates was killed during the evening of Monday, January 2nd, which was the bank holiday after the New Year, of course. They're keen to speak to anyone who was in the area near her cottage or may have visited her in the days before she died. And, of course, they also want to talk to anyone who knows who might be responsible. So if you've got any information, please do call West Mercia Police. Their number is 0300 333 3000. There is a £10,000 reward being offered by the independent charity Crime Stoppers. They can be contacted anonymously. Here's the number, 0800 555 111. OK, it's time for some more wanted faces. Here's Matthew.
Well, first we have Tyron Reid. Now, police are keen to trace the 33-year-old after he escaped from the back of a prison van 3 weeks ago. Reid, who has connections to Greenwich and London, has a deep scar on his left forefinger and a burn mark on his right wrist. Next to number 6, and that is Martin Wolstenholme. He's wanted in connection with a kidnap which took place in Newcastle-under-Lyme in Staffordshire in November 2010. The 32-year-old has links to Stoke-on-Trent and to Southampton. Police consider Wolstenholme to be dangerous. If you know where he is, call the police immediately. Well, next is Florent Prox. Although police aren't necessarily convinced that's his real name, detectives want to speak to the 23-year-old about a burglary in the West Midlands where cash and jewellery worth more than £20,000 was stolen. Now, Prox, who's from Romania, has links to Banbury in Oxfordshire. And lastly tonight is Barry Gordon-Williamson. He's wanted in connection with a string of burglaries across the country. 48-year-old Williamson was born in Newcastle but has links to Milton Keynes, Norfolk, Lancashire, Kent, Hampshire and Sussex. He regularly uses the first name Chris. 0500 600 600 if you recognise any of them, or text 63399, type crime, space and then your message. Of course, they all stay online until they're caught.
On the 13th of December, 52-year-old Andrew Heath enjoyed supper with his downstairs neighbours before going to bed as normal. But just a few hours later, he would wake to find his first-floor flat engulfed with flames. With his only exit blocked, he didn't stand a chance. Police are convinced that this was a deliberate arson attack. They need to know who did it, and they need to know why.
There's a fire outside my front door.
The burnt-out shell of this flat in Worcester is all that remains of the life of Andrew Heath, a 52-year-old who was murdered in an arson attack on his home just before Christmas. His friends and family have been left devastated by his untimely and terrifying death and have no idea why anyone would want to kill him.
We adopted him, 7-month-old, and we brought him up as our own. And he was a caring, kind, loving boy, and he had a lot of friends. I don't think we could have wished for a better son.
The fact that he was adopted made no difference at all, because he was my brother. I think he must have started singing when he was at school, when he was at secondary school, and he progressed to the male voice choir, which he loved. People liked to be around him. He was a big chap with quite a big personality. He came out when he was 18, and that would have been in the 70s. And it wasn't an easy time to come out as a gay person. And I think I was very proud of him that he'd done it. He had been in Worcester for quite a long time, and he liked Worcester. And he was very happy with his neighbours. And they shared a good deal of their lives, I think, together.
Andrew lived above us. We're ground floor. Every night, 8 o'clock, he'd come down, knock the door, dog would bark, because she knew it was Andrew.
And over the years, we've got closer and closer. He's like part of the family. But that particular night, he was
really cheerful that night.
Yeah. He got up and he said, I'll see you tomorrow. That was the last we saw of him.
Andrew went upstairs to his flat just before 9 p.m, where the police think he spent the rest of the evening.
Come on. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about.
I heard a noise. I thought it was just someone being a bit weird, like. I didn't take much notice of that.
His only exit was engulfed in flames. Now all Andrew could do was call for help.
Wake up! And all of a sudden there was a loud shout. There was just general talking, but I couldn't understand.
Sir, Clive!
And then all of a sudden there was a thud. So I said to Clive, Andrew needs us now.
Hello, fire service.
There's a fire outside my front door. I can't breathe.
What's your address, please?
2 Treadwell Close.
Can you not get out?
No.
I went round to the front. All I could hear Clive shouting was Andrew. I knew he couldn't be got out of that. I just stood there, just looking and in a daze, really, not really knowing. Was it real? Was it a dream? It was just horrible.
I just can't imagine what it would have felt like for him, struggling probably to get out of the flat and knowing he couldn't. It must have been terrible.
DCI Paul Williamson is investigating why someone would target Andrew.
Paul, in those last few moments for Andrew, it must have been absolutely terrifying.
Yes, we know from the 999 call that Andrew knows his porch is on fire. The heat and the smoke must have been unbearable. He knows he's trapped inside the premises and he's desperately trying to get help.
And if you look at the way the fire was actually set in the porch, I mean, it effectively barricaded him in, didn't it?
Yes, as you can see, the front doorway has been completely destroyed, as of the stairs. And it's this fact that makes me think it's a targeted attack on Andrew, because the killer has placed a wheelie bin in the porch area and burnt it, effectively blocking off any escape.
It felt as if somebody had eradicated every part of Andrew, because there was very little left.
I can't believe that somebody would have done this to Andrew.
That's right.
And I hope that, in a way, they'll be haunted by what he has done.
Somebody couldn't have planned it any better, really, to hurt the most.
A tragedy. Well, DCI Paul Williamson from West Mercia Police is with me now. It happened in the middle of December. Obviously, it was just a horrendous Christmas for this family. You and your team, you're really examining all sorts of motives just now.
Yes, I mean, this has the hallmarks of, you know, a really devastating attack on Andrew. We need to know what possible motives there may have been, and we're exploring a number of possibilities as to why this occurred. Could this have been somebody owed him money? We know that Andrew lent money to people and that may have led to a dispute. Could somebody have fallen out with Andrew in the months leading up to the attack? Or could it even be a grudge with something in his past that perhaps we don't know about, or maybe a relationship that we don't know about?
There were lots of people around. We saw in the reconstruction there noises were heard. It was quite busy on the estate that night.
Yes, we know that there's a group of people outside Andrew's flat, as well as raised voices in the early hours of the morning and particularly before the fire service are called. What were those people doing there?
So this bin that was set on fire, I mean, is it even a possibility that that was a prank that went really badly wrong?
Well, we've got to consider the fact that this could be a deliberate act by somebody intending to kill Andrew, or it could also be somebody trying to upset or scare Andrew. But whoever did this must have realised the terrible consequences of their actions, and I need answers to these questions for Andrew's family and friends who've been totally devastated by his death.
OK, well, thanks very much. It was a terrible way to die. You heard Andrew making the phone call there. He knew there was no escape. There is a £10,000 reward if you can provide police with information that results in the arrest and the conviction of the people who did it. If you can help, call the detectives here on 0500 600 600. Right, now it's time to have a look at some more CCTV. Here's Matthew.
And we start with a brutal assault in Warwickshire.
It's closing time at Coco's nightclub in Leamington Spa on a Wednesday night last June. As the clubbers gather outside on the street, one group seems intent on trouble. Some of them nip off down an alley and into a building site where at least two arm themselves with bricks. Back on the street, one of the men immediately lunges at his victim, smashing him in the face with the brick, before legging it, slapping a woman as he does. The victim's eye socket was fractured. Were you there, or can you name the brick thrower? A security guard keeps watch at a technology firm in Staffordshire during the early hours of a Thursday morning last August. Suddenly, a brick is hurled through the glass doors, followed immediately by a gang of 17 people, all wearing hoodies, some wielding hammers, knives, and even fence posts. The terrified guard is handcuffed and forced to the floor behind his desk, while the gang rampage round the building. They grab laptops and TVs off the walls, stuffing their loot into a duvet cover before making off. You can't see their faces, but someone knows who did this. Give us some names tonight. This is the Co-op store in Washway Road in Sale, near Manchester. It's just gone 6:30 on a Monday evening last May. After parking his bike outside, a balding man in a dark top walks in and wanders round. He seems to have forgotten his shopping list, but after much deliberation, he finally chooses a cream egg. He queues up and pays for his treat before whipping out what appears to be a gun, wrapped in a bag and threatening to kill the terrified cashier. The attacker acrobatically reaches over the counter and grabs handfuls of notes from the till before running off. Now, we need to find this guy. Name, please.
Well, all the CCTV stays online till they're caught. If you recognise anyone, you know what to do. 0500 600 600 or text on 63399.
Now, it's worth remembering that the vast majority of murder investigations in this country are eventually solved. But, of course, some are far more straightforward than others. And when police suspect murder, but there are no witnesses, no forensics, and not even a body, well, then detectives really have got their work cut out for them.
When Irma Tatti Rogers disappeared from her home in North Wales in January 2008, police suspected foul play. The problem was they had no way of proving it.
We were dealing with what is probably one of the most difficult cases you'll ever deal with, which is a murder with no body.
What followed was a cat-and-mouse chase between detectives and the man who almost got away with murder.
Well, we first of all got asked to look at an ongoing missing person case, a high-risk missing person case, into a 42-year-old Indonesian female called Irma Tatti Rogers, or Tatti as she was known to her friends, who'd lived in the Wrexham area for a number of years. It was highly unusual behaviour for Irma Tatti to go missing. She hadn't called anyone and she hadn't been seen in her house. And the way she'd left her house with food preparing on the cooking stove made it look like she'd just disappeared.
A police trawl of Irma Tati's contacts led detectives to a Polish friend of hers, Lukasz Respondek, and they soon established he was the last person to see her before she went missing.
Any detective, you're always looking closely at the last person to see the missing person alive.
But when police questioned Respondek, his story seemed plausible. He admitted seeing Irma Tati and said he'd given her a lift into town.
That was the last time I've seen her.
Police tried to investigate, but here, where Respondek claimed to have dropped Irma Tati off, is a CCTV blind spot. There was no way of checking his story either way.
But when they examined his laptop, police found something much more concerning.
Boss, you're not going to believe this. We found a number of search terms that had been put in, and these included putrefaction, rot, decay, and organisms that feed off dead bodies. And when I first saw that, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. These search terms have been put in Polish in Wikipedia. Why would somebody be doing that if they were innocent?
Detectives now made Respondek the main focus of their investigations, and they soon made what looked like another major breakthrough.
When we actually did the checks on his banking transactions, credit card, debit card, we found that on the Saturday morning, the day after Tati was last seen, he'd actually gone into town very early. He'd bought a suitcase, a shovel, a knife, some gloves and some plastic sheeting. In effect, what he'd actually bought was a shopping list to get rid of a body.
But a search of Respondek's house revealed things weren't going to be that simple.
Unbelievably, in the house, we found these items apparently unused. We just couldn't believe what we were seeing. From being at a point where we thought we've got a breakthrough here to going straight back down again, these items are in the house. He hasn't used them at all.
Detectives felt sure Respondek was deceiving them, so they began a painstaking trawl of his movements.
We found that he'd made a withdrawal of cash on the day after the detectives had seen him. We then checked CCTV footage in the local hardware store, and amazingly, he was there actually buying the same shovel he'd bought on the Saturday again, just 4 or 5 days later, but this time for cash.
Knowing that police checks on his debit card would reveal his incriminating purchases, Respondek had gone out and bought duplicate items to cover his tracks.
Alarmed by this devious behaviour, police began to formulate a theory that Respondek and Irma Tati had been having a secret affair. But might this affair have led to her murder?
We had all this circumstantial evidence. However, there was 3 significant things we didn't have. We didn't have a body, we didn't have any witnesses, and we didn't have any forensic evidence.
So Respondek was put under surveillance. And a year into the investigation, it was clear he was feeling the pressure.
Lucas's appearance changed significantly over the course of the inquiry. He became bedraggled, and he looked like a man on the edge. He looked very nervous. Someone who knew that the net was closing in on him, and it was only a matter of time before he was going to get caught.
Police intelligence showed Respondek was making regular visits to the Erthig estate, a rural area just outside Wrexham. And he'd labelled the area on his sat-nav with a 2-letter code, which seemed to resemble the victim's nickname, Tati. It was the police's last chance. They had to take a gamble.
A major search of farmland in Wrexham is being carried out tonight by the police.
We publicised it in the press, and we wanted everyone to know what we were doing. But most significantly, we wanted Lukasz Respondek to know what we were doing.
They're treating the case as a murder inquiry.
But what seemed like an exciting new lead was in fact an elaborate bluff by detectives. The dig, the search teams, the press reports were all set up by police to convince Respondek they knew where the body was. It was a trick to force him into making a mistake.
Lukasz Respondek's behaviour at that time was becoming more erratic. He'd actually gone out and bought a camouflage jacket and hat and a pair of binoculars, and he concealed himself in trees and undergrowth not far away from where we were digging. He was watching us digging the fields, but little did he know that we were also watching what he was doing at exactly the same time.
By now, Respondec was spending around 8 hours a day watching the police. But time was running out for the hoax dig, and detectives were still no closer to finding Irma Tatty's body.
Well, what happened next was unbelievable, really. We actually saw him leaving his house with a garden spade and fork and driving back to the location. And then we picked him up on cameras, actually going down into the lanes, looking behind him to see if he was being followed. This was a guy who was really spooked now, and we knew he must be close.
Respondec headed for the Ervig estate, panicked that the next day's diggers would unearth his guilty secret. But he wasn't prepared for the heavy clay soil which had preserved Irma Tatty's body over the 14 months since her murder, and which had also locked it firmly into the ground. After 3 hours of digging, he was defeated.
In the early hours of the following morning, Lucas Respondec walked into Wrexham Police Station and told officers he wanted to take them to the body of Irma Tatty Rogers.
Pathologists found no underlying natural illness or disease that might have killed Tatty, and identified the most likely cause of death as compression of the neck.
Tatty's body was in his house for some considerable time, at least probably 24 hours or so. Lucas Respondec had actually gone out, left the body in the house while he bought the items, but he'd also come back and played games online on his computer while the body was in his house, while he was deciding how he was going to get rid of the body. He then waited till it was dark and used those items to go and dispose of a body in the fields in Ervig.
We may never know for certain why Irma Tatty was killed, but despite the baffling lack of evidence at the outset, detectives took on her murderer in the ultimate test of nerve. And it was this high-risk bluff which led police both to her killer and to the place where he buried her body, here, in the cold North Wales clay.
He always felt that he was one step ahead of us and that he was too clever to be caught. He lied throughout the investigation to cover his tracks, and he just was a cold, calculating person. I don't think that he thought we'd keep on for as long as we did, and ultimately, I think that was his undoing.
So, Matthew, we're used to dealing with scams on this programme, but not usually ones perpetrated by the police.
Yeah, it was quite brilliant, a psychological con trick that couldn't have worked any better, because remember, the police had very little that was concrete at the time that they went public with this supposed new lead. Had Respondec done nothing, had he sat tight, had he not taken the bait, he could easily have just got away with it, but they managed to just get inside his head.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it came down to, a real sort of battle of wits in the end, this.
Yeah, it was. Every time they hit a wall, and they hit many in this investigation, they responded by thinking outside the box. The bluff was a good example. Another was when they wanted to use sniffer dogs. They carried out a covert operation to extract his scent. They had all the relevant authority to do it. He had no idea. He still doesn't, but last week, the detectives, the team, were explaining to me exactly how they did it. I mean, obviously, I can't repeat that. I wish I could, because it was incredibly clever. But that gave them the scent, the dogs used it, and that got them to within 100 yards of where Irma Tatty's body was eventually found. And you see, what all of this did was just pile more and more pressure on Respondec, and eventually he just cracked.
Briefly, the sentence in the end?
Life with a minimum of 18 years. The judge ordered he be deported at the end of the sentence to protect the public.
Matthew, thanks very much. Now, just take a look at this. It may be pretty small, but it is incredibly rare and valuable and an important part of Scotland's heritage. Police are investigating the theft of an irreplaceable collection of coins, including ones just like this one, which was in total worth almost £500,000. It is almost 5 years since they were taken. And now police have decided to relaunch an appeal in the hope that the coins may have surfaced somewhere. With me now is DCI Grant Dougal from Lothian and Borders Police, and also Philip Skingley from Spink of London. To you, first of all then, Grant, can you tell me a bit more about the case?
The collection of more than 2,000 coins were taken from the home of one of Scotland's leading coin experts. His house is in Broughton, a quiet village in the Scottish borders, and it took place overnight between the 6th and 7th of June back in 2007. Now, we believe it was a targeted raid because the thieves only took the coins and some jewellery that was stored with them.
Philip, can you tell me, I mean, they look to the untrained eye like mine fairly innocuous. What's so important about these things?
Well, essentially, they're all unique pieces of history in their own right. Each one can tell us something about the social and economic history of the period in Scotland. The earliest ones date from around the 10th, 11th century, and the collection consisted mostly of those earliest coins. They'd be instantly recognisable. I mean, this is, on a par with the theft of a national treasure.
Really? Well, given then that it's a national treasure, presumably, Grant, it's very difficult to sell it on.
Yes, they're extremely rare, and I'm appealing to anyone, and in particular to any dealer or collector who may think that they've been offered these coins, to get in touch tonight. We have conducted extensive inquiries across the country, and to date not a single coin from the collection has surfaced. Someone out there knows where they are, so please get in touch with information that could assist the recovery of the coins.
Yeah, very important indeed, gentlemen. Thanks very much. I should tell you there's a substantial reward. 50 grand is being offered for information which leads to the full recovery of this magnificent collection. So if you know anything about these beautiful Scottish coins, then do please get in touch with us tonight. There's the number, 0500 600 600. Time now for just a quick update on what's come in on the phones. Here's Matthew.
Well, a great response on all of our appeals. Let's start with the Nellie Geraghty murder. Detectives are desperate to get Nellie's killer and find Frank's ashes. They've had some calls about the bike, but detectives really need more information. They've also had calls about the bag. Let's turn to the Nottinghamshire armed robbery. Incredible violence used against Sarah and David Drazy. We've had a couple of similar robberies, calls coming in, one specifically at a post office. More information on anyone who saw that car swap on the A57. So, wanted face number 4, Abdul Samad Ahmed Raza, 13 calls on that. We'll give you more on the update.
OK, that's everything for now. Don't forget that you can view all the reconstructions, the wanted faces and the CCTV online, along with special web appeals, which this month include the brutal murder of 17-year-old Charlie Wright in South London. It's all at bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. The phone lines stay open until midnight tomorrow night. We're back again in 35 minutes after the news with the very latest on tonight's cases. Bye-bye.